Me too.
Now, I don't think we have quorum yet, but we might. There's 15 participants. But I did share this on my social media, so I do expect we have some guests. So I'll just wait for you.
Yeah, it looks like a quorum, actually.
Just let me know when you're ready for me to start, Mr. Secretary. You're on mute in case you don't know that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, every time I share a screen, I Zoom does a thing and I lose it. So give me 1 second to just set up the people in the room. Okay, participants, there it is. In chat. I already started roll calling and I got the agenda up and the whole 9 yards.
Okay, well, since I have a little bit of announcement to do, I'm going to call us to order at 9:02 Eastern. One thing I wanted everyone to know is that we do have another town hall scheduled for April 7th. And I believe that is a Thursday. Let me double check that on my calendar here. That seems like a Thursday.
It is
Yeah.
a Thursday.
Yeah, because the Texas convention is that weekend and it's the 8th and 9th or something like that. Okay, so it's a Thursday. So we'll be at 9 Eastern. The last town hall we had, I thought was extraordinarily productive. I think Mr. Cholko was there. There was a number of us there. So I do encourage everyone who can come to come. I think the members that got their voice heard were very, very appreciative of that. And I'll be asking the National Party to send out an email for the town hall. And they did do that for us last time. It seems like they're willing to do that for the town halls. So if the secretary is now ready to take the roll.
I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right. I don't see Gary Alstead. Okay, I see Mr. Bremen.
Yes.
Mr. Brown is here. Our
Here.
Vice Chair. Joe Brunhart is here. Josh Chappell from New Mexico. Okay, Matt Choco, he's here. Let's see. Kobe Clark, I don't see. Sean Dempsey, not seeing. Ken Matz, I see on the list. I see Mr. McColl's on the list. Tim McMaster. I don't see Ohio at all. Mr. Nana or Mr. Cavoli. I am present. Oh, wow, I didn't mark myself. Look at that. Ashley Shade. Mary Swim. And I thought I saw Mr. Taylor. Yes,
Yes,
he's
I'm here.
All right. Quickly go through the alternates. I see Mr. Cashato here. And Mr. Seebeck here. Okay, I don't see Ohio. Carolyn Cliff, I see. Hey.
Hi.
Luke Enzer from Pennsylvania. I do not see. Paul Grindle. Sean Hickman. Janae LeBlanc. Chris Lucchini. Daniel Miller. Rachel Nix.
I'm
I
here.
do see Star Child.
Rachel Nix
Rachel's
is
here
here.
too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I saw her on the screen.
there. Oh, there's Rachel. I see it. I know. I see it. Mark that. Present. Okay, and then none of the second alternates are here. Cat Martin, Caleb Newbill, Tim Yo. All right, so I believe Star Child will sit. And that gives us 13 members who can vote, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is opportunity for public comment. And we also usually allow, if for some reason a committee member would like to offer some commentary that normally isn't appropriate during the meeting. So if anyone would like to speak during this period of time, please raise your hand. For guests who are here who aren't familiar with Zoom, down at the bottom, there is a reactions tab. If you hit that, there is a raise hand. But if for some reason you can't find it, because Zoom always hides all of its little menus on me, just speak up and we will recognize you. So I'll just give a few moments to see if anyone raises their hand. Carolyn
All right.
Clift.
Killed myself. That makes it easier.
Ms. Clift.
Hi, I just wanted to mention that we're having a special election in Alaska because our U.S. congressional representative died, and he was the longest serving member of the U.S. House, Don Young. And we have an excellent Libertarian candidate, Chris Bai, who is going to register for the special election on Saturday morning. Chris has a website. It's called It's Time Alaska. And we would really appreciate your help. Anybody who feels like helping out, we feel like we have a shot at this. It's a special election. And whoever gets elected would only serve for 3 or 4 months. There's a regular election in November, but it's excellent publicity to get in the top 4 ranked choice voting, in the top 4 in the special election and the primary. So please contact the Alaska Libertarian Party or contact Chris Bai. It's spelled B-Y-E. And like I said, we need all the support we can get from national. We want to get a U.S. congressional candidate elected. Thanks.
And Ms. Clift, have the candidate get in touch with me if he's interested in appearing, giving a spiel on YouTube. I'd be more than glad to give him a platform.
All right, I will tell him that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Dempsey has entered the room.
Yes, I noticed. Thank
Okay,
you.
just wanted to make sure. Okay, Ms. Nix.
I just wanted to point out that Mr. Alsted is also here now.
Thank
Oh,
you.
excellent. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak during public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to what's kind of now been tradition, but I do ask your permission each time, where we are deferring approval of all minutes to email. I'm going to continue that practice unless I hear an objection. Okay, hearing none, and I think there's some ballots to start, Mr. Secretary, on the minutes. Remember, you have my permission to use my prerogative to unilaterally sponsor motions on your minutes so we can get those approved. Where we are at now, getting down to business, where we left off last time is we did agree to reconsider the prior approval of the gender autonomy plank, which was going to be placed in section 1. We hadn't determined what number at this point, which read gender autonomy. Individuals have the sole authority to determine and express their own gender identities. When we adjourned, there was a pending substitution by Mr. Ricuro with the language on the screen, which he lost for a second there. I could see it on my screen. And what it would do is amend 1.4 and change the title from personal relationships to personal relationships and expression, and add after or military service laws a new beginning to the next sentence, which would be individuals have the sole authority to determine and express their own gender identities. And then the sentence would continue. Government does not have the authority to define, promote, license, or restrict. And then he's adding in self-expression and then the rest of the plank goes the same. So I'm going to read the plank as it would read if it was passed as Mr. Ricuro proposed. Personal relationships and expression. Sexual orientation, preference, gender, or gender identity should have no impact on the government's treatment of individuals, such as in current marriage, child custody, adoption, immigration, or military service laws. Individuals have the sole authority to determine and express their own gender identities, and government does not have the authority to define, promote, license, or restrict self-expression and personal relationships, regardless of the number of participants. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships until such time as the government stops its illegitimate practice of marriage licensing. Such licenses must be granted to all consenting adults who apply. I had said that Mr. Ricuro would be up first to speak to his motion, and I also see Mr. Brown, who I will put next on deck. Mr. Ricuro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll briefly just say what I said at the last meeting, that we had kind of a consensus that this language or the idea that we could have strengthened this plank or another plank. There's a possibility that 1.4 is not the proper plank. This was the idea I threw out there. There was just a little bit of support and just enough support to reconsider. And so here we are. This language, especially the last sentence, all I did was take the last sentence and put it somewhere else. And where you see we oppose government's illegitimate practice. So because at the bottom there, it says until such time, that was just kind of clunky. So I feel like it's cleaner.
Mr. Ricuro, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm very, very sorry to interrupt, but the language you have on the screen isn't the language that we noticed on the agenda. And perhaps I wasn't clear last time. In the reconsider and on the list, I had let you know that some of the changes you were proposing to this plank went beyond the scope of what we were reconsidering, such as the deletion of that last sentence. If you would pull up the agenda, you will see the language that I had said would be in order for this reconsideration. And it seemed like we were all in agreement at that time. Of course, you can challenge my ruling at this point, but I do think you're going to have more luck with the committee limiting it to the gender autonomy issue and proposing those other changes as a separate amendment. But if you could pull up the agenda, you would see the language that I noticed for this meeting.
Correct. You're right, Madam Chair. But if I'm not mistaken, and I have it here in the notes, that we reconsidered at the last meeting, and that we were at, this is where we were at, was at the substitute, was reconsideration proposal. Oh, wait, I could have sworn we passed a reconsideration.
We passed the reconsideration, and then the motion, as I stated it, was what is in the agenda. Because you're doing a substitute for a plank that has a very narrow scope dealing with gender autonomy.
Yes.
To propose a substitute that went into other issues as deleting the potential reference to a nod to polyamory, and the issue of licensing goes way beyond gender autonomy. And I had ruled this on the list and wasn't challenged at the time, which is why I put on the agenda. And I invited you to make those changes in a separate motion, that they would be in order at this time. But that language that you don't have highlighted right now, the one that's up above it, with just those very targeted changes, that is what I had ruled on the list would be in order as a substitute for this very narrow issue of gender autonomy. Again, you can appeal that at this time if you would like. I'm just, from my experience telling you, I think you will have better luck if you don't and propose it separately, but you are free to obviously say, no, I want to propose all these changes at this time and appeal my ruling.
So I was a little mistaken. I could have sworn I had thought that we were at the, I understand what you're saying. I thought we were at the top text and I had introduced the substitute. I honestly don't remember, and I don't wish to appeal your ruling, Madam Chair. So I'm okay with just touching the this top part, because I completely agree that it's outside the scope. So
Okay. And feel free to propose the other language just in a separate motion.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, so would you like to, I'm sorry, because I did interrupt your flow. If you'd like to start again speaking to your motion.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say that this is cleaner. And then I came up with another idea, which is my substitute. So I'd be okay with either or. I like I said, I had mentioned that I thought that strengthening a plank versus just a new plank would be a better idea. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yes, I agree with not having the separate plank for gender autonomy and putting it in this personal relationships plank. But I don't see why we should have such a long sentence. I would move an amendment to put a period after identities and get rid of and then just continue with the new sentence, government does not have the authority.
Okay, if
Good
I
suggestion.
wanted to make sure I understood. So you're moving to amend the substitute to have it so that the sentence would just be individuals have the sole authority to determine and express their own gender identities, period. And then you would start the new sentence as it were, capital G, government, does not have the authority to define, promote, license, or restrict, and then you keep self-expression and. Am I correct?
Exactly. It's much cleaner that way. I don't like having a long compound sentence.
Okay, thank you. And I just would like to know if anyone's not speaking, if you could mute yourself, we are getting a little bit of background. I am going to put myself in line, but if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand. We are now on Mr. Brown's amendment, and I would like to use the very rare times that I am going to speak in favor of his amendment, and let me say why. At first I didn't see this, but when I read it out loud, why I always recommend people hear something read aloud, it went from gender autonomy right into government, then ending with that phrase, regardless of the number of participants. And that regardless of the number of participants makes sense in the sentence if it just starts with government. It makes no sense when you throw gender autonomy in there. It almost sounds like you're trying to promote people being multi-beings or something. But I understand that wasn't in your original proposal, Mr. Secretary, that I had ruled your striking of that number of participants thing as beyond the scope. But with that out of there, I think it makes more sense now and doesn't create this weird multi-being thing that went into my own head when I was reading this. And that's all I am going to speak on this with one last comment. It is my general experience that conventions are more likely to approve an amendment to a plank rather than a brand new plank, just strategically speaking. Mr. Seebeck and then Starchild.
Yeah, I just had a point of order. Was Mr. Brown's proposed amendment didn't it take the and out of there?
It took the and out of there.
Thank you.
I didn't see on the screen. Yeah, it took the and out of there. Was that it, Mr. Seebeck?
Yes.
Thank you. Starchild.
Yeah, if we're not too deep in, I'd like to propose a further amendment.
It would not be in order at this time because we're on a substitute, which is already a first level of amendment. Once Mr. Brown's amendment is disposed of, you could make an amendment. But
Okay,
right now,
I'll put the language in chat for people.
Okay, right now we are just on Mr. Brown's amendment.
who want to wait.
Okay, would anyone like to speak to Mr. Brown's amendment? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to ask, is there any objection to Mr. Brown's amendment? Okay, seeing none, that passes. So Starchild, I will recognize you now for the amendment you wish to make.
Okay, I wanted to propose a change to the final sentence, which reads, until such time as the government stops its illegitimate practice of marriage licensing, such licenses must be granted to all consenting adults who apply. The problem here is it refers to the government as if it's just one governmental practice. Of course, there are many governments doing this, even within the United States. It's typically not the federal government, but state or local governments that are involved in marriage licensing. So I propose the wording, until such time as the illegitimate practice of marriage licensing is ended, such licenses must be granted to all consenting adults who apply. So
Okay.
basically saying the same thing, but
I'm going to probably do something you're not going to like here. And
You're
of
gonna roll
course,
it out of order.
I am, because right
Okay.
now we are dealing,
Understood. You know, you don't have to explain. I understand your thinking on this. So just keep it
Okay.
in mind for when it's in order.
it will be in order, right, when we're done dealing with a substitute to
Yeah, okay.
the subject of the gender autonomy, which we're trying to stick to that. Okay, so now we are back on the Recuro substitute as amended by Mr. Brown. Is there any further debate or amendment? Mr. Taylor.
I'll go ahead and speak on this. I said this before, but I do prefer a separate plank to the planking, including the language, even if it is identical, into the other existing platform plank, because I do think this is an important issue. It's a topical issue. It's something that everybody can recognize, and it would be stronger as a separate plank. So I'm going to support the original rather than the substitute in this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And I would remind, I don't know how strong the feelings are on one side or another on this, that if there's enough support for an alternative, that this is perfect opportunities for minority report, to just remind the committee members of their rights. Is there any further debate or amendment to the Recuro substitute? Mr. Brungart.
Would it be in order to delete the word "the" in front of government in the last sentence? It's just to keep the same flow. It says government does not have, and then in the last sentence, we say the government.
Can I ask that? That's really a non-substantive change.
Okay.
And I know Star Child wanted to, I'm trying to keep this on the topic of gender autonomy and deal with further amendments to this plank separately. If I could please have the committee.
Understood, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further debate or amendment to the Recuro substitute? Is there any further or debate to either of them? To either the original, which is still open for amendment. If you could show that as well, Mr. Secretary, when you have a moment. It is the original plank was just the single sentence as its own plank entitled Gender Autonomy. Individuals have the sole authority to determine and express their own gender identities. Before we're moving to determine whether the substitute shall become the main motion, they're both open to amendment. Okay. I already heard there was dissent. So, Mr. Secretary, when you are ready, what we're going to move to a roll call vote on now is whether the Recuro substitute shall become the main motion. If not, we will keep the original one, but because we did move to reconsider, we will have to revote upon it again. Star Child did raise this question last meeting saying, does reconsider mean when it's revoted on, we could end up with nothing? And I said, yes. So that is.
I'm sorry, to be clear, that language on the screen right now is the current, the stuff that we've passed?
The language in blue is the new plank. He didn't put the title. The title though is 1.x at this point, because we didn't know where we were going to put it, gender autonomy. That's the one that was passed, but we moved to reconsider it. So it's as if it wasn't passed. We would have to pass it again.
Okay, so there's nothing passed now. So this, I got it. It all makes sense to me now. Sorry.
Okay, but what we are voting on right now is, shall the Recuro substitute become the main motion, or will the main motion remain that language that we ended up reconsidering? Is everyone clear on what we're voting on? Okay, Mr. Secretary, whenever you are ready, if you'll do a roll.
Yes, I'm gonna leave that on screen so that everyone has an understanding. And okay, I get to my ballot here. All right, here we go. Gary Alstead,
I will not be voting.
Are you deferring to Ms. Nix?
I am. Thank you.
Okay, if you could call Ms. Nix in his place.
okay, Rachel Nix,
Pass. I need to reread this.
okay. Mark Raymond,
Aye.
and Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunhart,
Pass.
Matt Choco,
Pass.
John Dempsey, Sean Dempsey,
Aye. I vote aye.
okay, Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Tim McMaster,
Aye.
Omar Recro will vote nay. Mike Seebeck,
Aye.
Starchild,
Aye.
Corey Taylor,
Nay.
John Thompson.
Abstain.
Okay, we're gonna come back to the passes, and I'll just put this on screen so everyone can see where we're at here. The passes are, we're coming back to Rachel Nix.
I guess I.
Okay. Joe Brunhart.
I'll abstain.
Okay. And Matt Choco.
I'll also abstain.
Okay. Did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, we have 9 in favor, 2 opposed, and 3 express abstentions.
Okay, so the Recuro substitute has now become the main motion. Once you can get that back up onto the screen.
Yep. Okay.
And at this point in this proposal, the only amendments that would be in order are ones that would add language related to gender autonomy to the end, which I don't think anyone wants to do. They would have done it already. So I do think we are prepared for a vote, but I don't want to just assume that. So I'm going to give a moment. Further amendments to this plank would be in order as a separate proposal, just FYI. Okay,
Wait, Madam Chair,
yes, Dr. John.
once the substitute has become the main motion, wouldn't my amendment be in order now?
Not at this point, because the way I've done my ruling is that it would need to be done in an entirely separate proposal. This is still having to do with gender autonomy. And in this proceeding, once you pass a substitute as the main motion, no further amendments to it are in order at that time, unless it's to add language to the very end. But because we are working on a platform and we have multiple proposals on the same plank, dealing with this separate subject matter, such as what if Mr. Recuro wishes to propose the deletions that he talked about, or the minor amendments you were talking about, that would be in order as a separate proposal. And I actually think the one you were talking about, and I believe it was also Mr. Brungart was in support, is relatively non-controversial enough to take to the email list. And that's what I would suggest. Otherwise, I will put it on the agenda for the next meeting because it was not noticed for this meeting.
Okay.
Right, thank you. All right, so what we are voting on is whether we will adopt as a committee the amendments that you see on the screen, which is the Recuro substitute. And again, I remind the folks that wanted the separate plank that as long, I believe it was 4, I need to double check the number, but I believe it takes 4 platform committee members to join in a minority report. When you can, Mr. Secretary, if you would take the roll, and I'm gonna go let that annoying little dog in the room that's barking outside my door.
Okay, will it be Rachel or Gary in California?
I think we're both looking at each other to see the answer. If it's all right with Gary, I can vote on this.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so Ms. Nix,
I'll vote aye.
Okay. Mark Raymond. Did we lose Mr. Brayman? I'll come back to him. Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunhart,
Yes.
Matt Choco,
Aye.
John Dempsey,
Aye.
Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Tim McMaster.
Aye.
Laura Crow will come back. Mike Seebeck,
Aye.
Darchild,
Aye.
Curry Taylor,
Aye.
John Thompson.
Aye.
Okay. I passed myself, so I'll vote aye as well.
I'm here. I will vote aye as well. Mark
I
Raymond.
was coming back to you next, Mr. Brayman. Thank you.
My apologies.
No, it's
Technical.
okay. It's okay. Roll. All right, Madam Chair, I think we are unanimous here. We have 14 in favor and no opposed, no express abstentions.
I'm sorry, before we fully close this, we were voting on the black text, not the blue, right?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, so that passes. Next, we are going to, on the agenda, I don't know if you wanted to pull up the agenda or what was better for you.
I've got it. Item D right here.
Okay, all right, so it's another reconsideration of a previously passed proposal on individual security, excuse me, internal security and individual rights. The language on the screen, when Mr. Secretary can get there, is the language that we had passed. There had been some, now the dog wants to go out. I'm ruling this dog out of order. You're out of order. My goodness. Rachel, did you mean to keep your hand up or can I lower that?
No, sorry, that was for the
Okay,
question asked
yeah.
before, but as long as I quickly have the floor, I'm just returning my seat to Mr. Alston.
Okay. Skippy, come here, come here. So there was a lot of discussion on the list as to whether the word epidemic adequately covered what we wanted to cover. There was enough support or perhaps potential consternation that I had agreed to sponsor a motion to reconsider this. The same caveats apply. If we move to reconsider, it will be as if we pass the motion to reconsider, as if we didn't pass any language at all, and we would be starting afresh with the language from 2020, because that's kind of what we started from. We could start afresh with the language as if, you know, as we originally, that probably be easiest if there's no objection from the committee, because it seemed like there was really, it was just that one word. Someone could propose a substitute, but we're not even there yet. I am sponsoring the motion to reconsider. I'm not going to speak to it. I think there was plenty of discussion of it on the list. I'm doing this on behalf of members so that no one has to be the bad guy to move to reconsider. But again, if we reconsider it, we're considering this proposal afresh. Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Madam Chair, I saw as a request for information or, yeah. What's the, if we reconsider this, where do the language that's on the screen that's back up for amendment, or what's going to happen? Is a substitute amendment going to be introduced?
No, but okay. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on this. If we vote to reconsider, we are going to be looking at the language up top on the screen once again, as if we didn't pass it. It will be fully open for amendment or substitution. There is nobody moved a substitute. The things that I had put in the agenda were just some notes that were suggested on the list, but no one had said they intended upon moving it. I just wanted to keep our notes in one place. So for instance, suggestions have included replacing epidemic with medical considerations, medical emergencies and the like, but nothing was formally suggested as an amendment. There was a substitute the first time we considered this that was previously rejected. That's the language in blue. I put it up here for reference only. Someone could move that substitute again if they wished, but that isn't why I put it there. I put it there just for reference only for the committee. But what's on the table right now is a motion to reconsider. And in debating the motion to reconsider, you can fully go into the debates of the merits of the original motion. So I have Mr. Choco, Mr. Alfstad, and Mr. Brayman.
Thank you. So I oppose the motion to reconsider for several reasons. One is, I grant that epidemic is not a perfect, it's not perfect phrasing here. But, we went through this quite a bit before. I feel like we've kind of determined that perfect phrasing isn't going to happen. I also think, so if we believe that perfect phrasing is not going to happen, then I think we should just be satisfied with what we have here. Further, by opening it back up, there is the possibility that we don't agree on anything and don't pass anything. And I think it is important to get some sort of language on this matter into the platform. So I don't like, I think that risk is probably pretty small of us coming back with nothing, but it's greater than zero, and I don't want to take that risk. Also, as a practical matter for our meeting here, how much time are we going to spend working on this word? We've already done this plank. We've got something pretty decent, and I think we should just leave well enough alone and move on to other business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choco. Mr. Alfstad.
Yeah, I just agree with everything Mr. Choco just said. So I guess I don't need to say it too. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Mr. Brayman, Mr. Ricuro, then Star Child. Mr. Brayman.
Yes, the discussion in the email thread mentioned that some rank and file members of the Libertarian Party felt some doubt as to whether or not the word epidemic included the current pandemic. I do think that the suggestions of medical considerations and medical emergencies are no improvements over that. I would, if I were those friends, I would be like, if why are you using the word epidemic? I would also be asking, why are you using the word medical considerations if you intend to include a pandemic, the current pandemic? The only way to solve that, in my opinion, would be to actually place the word pandemic right into the plank. Contrary to some suggestions that people made, the word pandemic was never explicitly considered by this committee as a whole, never voted on. I believe I chose the word epidemic over pandemic when I was trying to come up with an alternative to the apocalypse reference, God, now I'm forgetting the word. But in any case, I think it's important to be as clear and transparent about what we mean as possible. I don't think it's necessary to consider this tonight, but if we would come back to this at some point later on, I would suggest that we consider the word pandemic here to make it as clear as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Mr. Ricuro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Choco more or less laid it out for me. I'll just say that sometimes the enemy of perfect, good, it can be the enemy of perfect. Not really a fan of this wording, wasn't really a fan of the debate that we had, and we had extensive debate on this, I think over 2 meetings. And to the chair's point about writing a minority report would be in order. I'm still reconsidering what I want to do for the previous motion that just passed. So And I feel like the strongest way or the best way to get anything past the delegates is for it to be part of the committee report, not a minority report. So I'm not a big fan of minority reports. So to Mr. Bremen's point, maybe another time we could reconsider this. Maybe we could do it over email as a competing motion. However, the committee wants to do it. But I don't think I want to support reconsideration tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Star Child, and then I'm going to put myself in the mix. And Mr. Choko remembered the word pestilence. That was the apocalyptic word. It was one of the 4 horsemen, I think. Mr. Star Child. So sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I actually just had a point of information, but I thought I'd let other people go ahead in case somebody else's comment clarified it for me. I'm not clear looking at what's on the screen. What is the current language that we adopted for a recommendation and what the scope of the reconsideration would be? Would the reconsideration be to add the language in underlined blue at the top or the bottom or both? I'm not clear what's going on here.
Okay. The language at the blue at the bottom is just a previously rejected substitute that I've just put up for reference. What we are reconsidering is the motion up at the top there that starts with the big block of red, then has some blue and some black. That first paragraph, that is what the motion to reconsider is about. If the motion to reconsider passes, people could take some language from that bottom blue if they wish. They could do pretty much anything they wanted to on this topic.
Okay, so basically we're just deciding whether to get rid of the red language that struck out and add the blue paragraph immediately below it instead.
No. That blue paragraph below is just information. It's not part
No.
of
I
this.
mean the one starting with individual rights. We're adding that.
Yes. Thank you.
Right now, the red language that struck out is part of what we recommended.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, I would like to speak in favor of reconsideration. I remain uncomfortable with the language. The defense of the country requires that we have adequate intelligence.
That's struck.
Well, I thought you said that was not struck. I thought you said that was part of our current recommendation.
It is part of our current recommendation, but right now it's struck. We will be reconsidering whether or not we want to strike it.
I am sorry, Madam Chair. I'm totally confused. Is it possible we could just see the language on the screen, only what is currently adopted?
That is what you were looking at right there.
What's highlighted is what is current?
No, all the way up to the red. That is our current proposal.
But not the sentence with individual rights. That's what we're talking about adding, correct?
That's all part of our current proposal. That's what we passed. What you see on the screen is what we passed.
Okay, so the proposed change that's being considered right now is
there's no proposed change being considered right now. What's being considered right now is whether we're going to reconsider this proposal. There's no changes proposed. We're deciding whether we want to propose changes, not any specific changes.
Well, is there a change that somebody wanted to? So right now, if we do nothing, our recommendation will read: individual rights shall not be curtailed, whether based on circumstances of war, epidemic, et cetera. The rest of that paragraph.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess then I'm not in favor of reconsideration, absent some compelling argument that there's some additional change we need to make. I didn't like the first language. I didn't understand that was already gone.
Yes.
Confusing what was on the screen. Okay. Sorry if that was clear to everybody else for wasting the time.
Right. Thank you, Star Child. The only thing I will add here, I'm not moving anything. I'm just saying, and perhaps this could be a minority report with the confusion. I want to explain what people had told me they were confused about, because I want to explain what the concern of members was. An epidemic is less than a pandemic. And with the word epidemic being in there, the concern of members was that our platform would say, for something that was more localized, like an epidemic, we don't believe that individual rights should be curtailed. But in a pandemic, which is worldwide, perhaps we would consider it. That is why people were concerned. And some more commentary I got had said, if the word pandemic was there instead of epidemic, pandemics include epidemics. Epidemics don't include pandemics. That you always want to have the greater thing because all the lesser things are subsumed within it, where the opposite is not true. And other suggestions I had heard from members is including both words, epidemic, pandemic, natural disaster. But the comments I had heard from members that if we were going to choose between epidemic and pandemic, we'd be much clearer choosing the word pandemic rather than epidemic, because the greater would subsume the lesser. I'm not going to be making any amendments. I'm just trying to communicate what I had heard from members and what prompted the motion to reconsider. Mr. Brungart, then Mr. Alfstad.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready to do this tonight, so I don't think we should reconsider. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Alfstad.
I just want to correct something about the English language. Pandemic does not include epidemics. Pandemic is literally defined as an epidemic that is worldwide. So if we say pandemic, it means that we're okay with it, that epidemic isn't covered.
Thank you, Mr. Alfstad.
Oh.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak regarding the motion to reconsider? Mr. Seebeck.
I'll make it simple. If you move to reconsider, I'll propose an amendment to put in epidemic or pandemic, and it will solve all this problem without any problem with issues.
I'm sorry, we are moving to reconsider right now, but it's just a motion to reconsider.
I'm speaking in favor and saying
Oh.
that if that passes, I will make that amendment.
Okay, 1 second. Can we stand at ease for 2 minutes, please? I need to ask my husband to take care of the
Thanks,
dog.
bud.
Thank you.
He needs to close the door.
I do remember that from last session in 2020.
I need you to take care of Skippy. He's completely disrupting this meeting.
An iconic moment. I'm glad that somebody brought it up.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Seebeck. Would anyone else like to speak for or against, or any other things they might like to say with regards to the motion to reconsider? All the demics, I see that. We hate all the demics. All right, if we can then move to a vote whenever you are ready, Mr. Secretary.
Yes.
And what we're voting on is whether or not we shall reconsider. A yes vote means we're going to go back to working on this. A no vote means we're moving on to the next agenda item.
Okay. California's first. Gary Alfred.
No.
Downstairs now.
Mark Raymond.
Aye.
Ted Brown.
Nay.
Joe Brunhart.
Oh,
Matt Choco.
No.
John Dempsey.
Nay.
Ken Matz.
Nay.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Tim McMaster.
Abstain.
Omar Recur will vote nay. Mike Seebeck.
Aye.
Star Child.
Nay.
That was a nay.
Correct.
Curry Taylor.
Abstain.
John Thompson.
No.
Okay, I will get this on the screen for everybody. Ballot number 4. Madam Chair, did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, we have 3 in favor, 9 opposed, 2 express abstentions.
Okay, the motion to reconsider has not passed. Next up, Star Child, the language you had posted on the list is a different subject matter.
than what you wrote. I realized that.
Well-
I think maybe you misunderstood what I was requesting to put on the agenda. I meant sort of the general matter of committee transparency. I hadn't proposed the specific motion that you were.
Okay. Well, you've brought this up multiple times. I think the committee is on sufficient notice that you wish to bring this up. So make whatever motion at this point that you wish to make on this topic.
Yeah, so I don't know if the secretary has the language I posted to list, could put that on screen perhaps. I think it kind of speaks for itself. I'm interested in people's discussion and so forth. But I note that you said you did ask the.
Before we get to debate though, could you read aloud? The secretary will get the language, but if you could at least read it aloud so that committee members know what we're discussing.
I'll have to try to bring it up myself on a separate screen then to do it in just a moment.
Give me just a second. I've got
Okay. This would be basically a letter that we would send to national headquarters. The Libertarian Party's strength and credibility lie not just in our devotion to freedom, but in our party being a grassroots member-run organization. As members of the platform committee, we embrace the transparency and accountability that are an essential part of this member-based model. We welcome and encourage LP members to make their voices heard, including by attending and participating in our committee meetings. Toward this end, we ask the Libertarian National Committee and national staff to, the 3 bullet points. First point, include our email addresses and phone numbers with our names on the party's committee page. Then I have a link for that. For anyone who may wish to contact us with questions, suggestions, or feedback about our work on the party platform. Second bullet point, list upcoming platform committee meetings along with the information needed to participate in those meetings on the calendar at lp.org/calendar. Third bullet point, publish the minutes of our past meetings and agendas for upcoming meetings, along with the information needed to participate in those meetings on a page linked to the platform committee's listing at the committee page website. So that's basically it. There's more that could be said, but I wanted to keep it fairly short and hopefully non-controversial.
Okay, thank you, Starchild. So if I understand correctly, you basically would be directing me as chair, if this passed, to send an email to headquarters and copy the LNC, saying that on such and such a date by such and such a vote, the platform committee passed the following.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I'm open to other suggestions or interpretations for the nuts and bolts of how to implement it, but that sounds straightforward.
And then you were in your intro to this had asked me, I'm going to give this just for the committee's information, and just a cautionary note. I'm allowing the motion somewhat with reluctance because I do think this isn't quite necessarily our business, but I know, and other committee members could raise a point of order and say it's out of order if they wish. I'm not going to automatically rule it out of order. To give to the committee's information, I have always asked myself to headquarters for every committee member who has given me permission, because I don't believe we should be posting email addresses and phone numbers for people who have not already consented, but I have asked people for their consent. The committee list, unless it's changed in the past couple of weeks, isn't even up to date. I'd be happy if it even listed the proper people. I've sent all this information over several times. I don't want this meeting to turn into a critique of the LNC and the job they're doing or not doing. So all I can say is that I have made these requests. I disagree with publishing minutes and the things of that like, because that's what LPedia is for, and that is what the LNC is going to tell you. And our minutes and agendas and information needed to participate is all up on LPedia. I have done, except for including the email addresses, pretty much everything you've asked for on Elpedia, which members control. Just so I have done this. I don't think saying that the committee voted to do such and such is going to help anything. In fact, I think it might hurt and give the impression to the LNC and staff that the platform committee is doing pretty much stuff other than platform committee work, which is what we're supposed to be doing. I'm just giving you my perspective, but I'll put you back in line, Star Child, because you did speak to it, because we have some other people to speak. I have Mr. Taylor, Mr. Ricuro, Mr. Alvstead, Star Child, and Cholko.
Yes, maybe I'm just missing something. I don't really understand what the issue here is. I would assume that putting an email address on a website with phone numbers is a non-trivial task, and like it can be done by any staff member at any time. Matter of fact, I would have expected it to have done months ago when we started the committee. So I don't understand exactly why that's an issue. And is it just a matter of negligence that they're not updating the website, or is it a matter of something else? I'm not privy to what's going on here.
I used to do it. I will leave it at that.
Okay.
And it is a trivial task. Mr. Ricuro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not going to be that person to ask this to be ruled out of order. But I saw the language today and I thought to myself, this is way outside of what I thought Star Child was asking for at the last meeting. And this is a resolution. And the way I read the bylaws and the way to the chair's point, the platform committee is now doing something that's not the platform committee. I think of it like the Constitution, and where the government and the president thinks that, well, if it's not there, I can do it. If it doesn't specifically say that the platform committee can't pass a resolution against the LNC, that we can do it. This is not what we should be doing. The chair has done everything she possibly can. I'm trying to word this in the nicest way possible. We've had this discussion several times. We are doing everything. We're doing the job that we're tasked with, and that's where I'll leave it at. So I'm not supporting this. I'd like for us to move on as quickly as possible from this. There are other ways to I think accomplish this, and a resolution of this committee towards the LNC is not the way to do it. And I'll just I'll yield on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Alvstead.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of repeat what's been said. I think Star Child's absolutely right that all this stuff should be on the website. Maybe the email addresses and phone numbers with some kind of opt-out permission. But he's right. This information should be available to our members. I just don't see that this is the way to get it. That the whoever's running the LMC, the website, they must know that people want this, and for whatever reason they've decided not to do it. And I guess I don't see the point, although I grant that Star Child's absolutely right. That should be there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cholko.
Thank you. So I definitely support the intent here. As others have mentioned, I think that all this stuff all of these things should be done. I think possibly, the more, I don't know the right word, but another option for handling this is just for each of us on our own to lean on the LNC with emails and through our regional reps and the like, rather than doing this thing as a committee that is arguably, at least, not something we're supposed to be doing. I'm not sure if I really agree that it's not something we're supposed to be doing, but I certainly understand that there's a good argument to be made there. So you know, I haven't decided yet whether I support this or not, but regardless of that, I feel like there's a certainly a very appropriate avenue for us as committee members and just as party members, and that's to reach out to the LNC directly, individually rather, to try to make something happen. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Star Child. I put myself in line. Then I have Mr. McHose. Star Child.
Thank you. At the Libertarian Party of California convention last month, the platform committee proposed an amendment to the bylaws. It was concerning the platform, but it wasn't an amendment to the platform. It was an amendment to the bylaws. I actually thought that was out of order, but the convention ruled it in order. They adopted it. This is not any change to any other document. This is simply us speaking as a collective group. I think it's every group should have the natural ability to speak collectively as a group if they choose to do so. And this is about a matter that directly affects us and the business of our committee, and simply trying to make sure that everybody in the LP has the opportunity to weigh in and be involved with the platform updating process to the extent that they may wish to do so. I'm not even considering it a resolution. I consider it a letter. I think a letter is different from a resolution. A resolution is kind of, this is, you know, to be out there broadcast to the world. I don't think that that's necessary at this point. I think just a letter letting the LNC know that this is what we'd like them to do, this is what we'd like national staff to do, is all that's necessary now. Perhaps if it doesn't happen, if they were to, you know, if we pass this and they were to completely ignore it, then perhaps a resolution might be in order. But at this point, I just think having an official letter coming from the committee is needed. I mean, the chair has just told us she has tried to get this stuff done unsuccessfully. I tried when I was on the LNC and when I was off the LNC to get much of this stuff done for committees in general, not just for the platform committee. I can't tell you in so many words exactly why it hasn't happened. I will make the general observation that I think everybody on the LNC tends to pay lip service to transparency.
Excuse me, Star Child, I'm not going to, I'm treading very, very carefully here. I do not think it's the role of this committee to engage in extended critique of the LNC.
And I'm not doing that.
Okay, I think we're getting there though. So I'm
Okay.
asking.
Well, that I was just giving my personal opinion. That's not part of the language that I'm proposing here. I don't think there's anything in the language of the letter that's not, you know, just straightforward, diplomatically worded. I mean, I wouldn't even say diplomatically worded. There's nothing really in there.
This meeting is publicly recorded, and I'm just making it clear.
Okay.
I don't think it's the role of this committee to engage in a critique of the LNC.
Okay, well, let's just say that for whatever reasons, it hasn't happened. And I think that in support of our chair's efforts, a letter from our committee saying this is where we stand on the matter would be helpful. Something official like this might help get the ball rolling. I'm not sure that the current people on the LNC or in staff have any opposition to doing these things. It may just not be high on their priority list or really on their radar. I mean, a lot of times I think that's what happens with transparency stuff. It's not that people are necessarily opposed to it. It's just not really a high priority. It's not one of the things that they're sort of really looking at as like, this is an important part of what we're doing here. It needs to be, it's kind of like public comment. A lot of times public comment in different committees gets passed over. Some people don't even notice, you know, even though it's supposed to be the beginning of every meeting. I definitely think it's within our rights to speak as a committee. I think that other efforts so far have failed. I think this is something simple and straightforward. We should pass it. If we don't, it's going to keep coming back. This whole transparency issue.
Thank you, Star Child. This is what I'll promise the committee. I mean, obviously, if it's passed, I'm going to do whatever the committee tells me to do. But if it isn't passed, I will write once again. And I'm not going to ask for our minutes of past meetings to be published because that is what LPDA is for. No committee does that. And that's never been the past practice. So I fundamentally disagree there. They are publicly available on LPDA. But what I will do is, pretty much everything else. I have asked for it to be listed on events. I could ask for the email addresses, the phone numbers. And I promise I will continue to ask for on a weekly basis. I think informally, just letting me handle it and not having a committee vote, I really think that positions this committee as somewhat critical and antagonistic to the party leadership, which I do think is not healthy for us and not something we should be doing. And I'm saying that as somebody who personally has my own criticisms, but I don't think that is the role of this committee. So I make a promise to this committee that, and ask this committee to take me at my word. I could even copy the platform committee and put it on the list, that I will continue to write the LNC or the executive director, but I will include the LNC on a weekly basis. And they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. And that's what I suggest. Mr. McHose, and then Mr. Thompson, then Mr. Seebeck.
I'd like to back up what the chair is saying, Ms. Karen N. Like she said, she's contacted them about numerous issues on the website. My own name and the Information Service Committee is spelled incorrectly, okay? I'm telling you the legitimacy of the situation we're dealing with. So this is not gonna get us anywhere. I'm telling you, they're just being flat out. If you want to get something accomplished, contact your region rep, possibly. And as well, this is also a security risk for us to be posting our lists and phone numbers. If we are to do anything, we are to have a contact form, which emails the whole list and it allows them to send us an email, not because otherwise we will get spam and scam phone calls all the time. And this is me talking as the IT director of Alaska. We do not do this because you will otherwise get a lot of spam and scam emails. You will get signed up for who knows what. This is what happens when you put your email address and your phone number publicly available on websites like this.
Thank you, Mr. McHose. Mr. Thompson.
This entire conversation is dilatory, as the member who raised it won't even register with Zoom to do these meetings properly. I think it's ridiculous. The idea that you want to publish an email address, just as the previous speaker spoke, that exposes all of the members to things that, again, the member who brought this up won't even register with Zoom for, is just patently ridiculous. And it's dilatory and it's a waste of the committee's time. Thank you.
Okay, and I will have to ask, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, that we refrain from attacking. I'm not saying you were, but I think we were getting close to attacking other members. Mr. Seebeck.
Yeah, as the co-founder of the Transparency Caucus for the LP, I appreciate Star Child's sentiments. I understand the concerns. I also agree with Mr. McHose that putting the PII out there is a very bad idea, and I speak of that from that as an IT security expert. On the other hand, we can instruct the LNC, we can ask the LNC all we want, but I don't think this is the way to grease the squeaky wheel. I think this is something that needs to be addressed separately. I don't know how responsive the current LNC is going to be until after, versus the next one. And it's not a criticism, it's just a statement of composition. And yeah, it needs to be addressed, but I don't think we can do it this way. Or not be effective with it anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Seebeck. Star Child.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention in my previous comment, in response to some of the things you said, Karen Ann, is nothing in there is incompatible in the letter is incompatible with the page that is linked where our meetings and agendas and such we posted could be Lpedia. I think Lpedia would be perfectly fine and an appropriate place to have that information. That's completely compatible with the language that I have there. And in response to what Joshua and some others were just saying as far as spam, I've been on the LNC twice. I had my phone number and email address public there as well. And that's higher profile than the platform committee. I got actually relatively few people contacting me. I think people maybe are overestimating our own visibility or importance a little bit. I don't think we're going to be bombarded with spam, and there's ways to prevent automatic harvesting of emails. You can put the @ sign and brackets or something so that you can reading it, you can tell what the email address is, but it's not going to automatically get picked up by email harvesting. The other thing is I'm amenable to just, even if we had just only the people that wanted their information to be on there, as I do myself, that would be a step forward. Somebody wants to, modify the letter to say those members who request it, rather than just applying that it's every member of the committee. I'd be fine with that. And I don't think it's equivalent to, giving your information to a corporation like Zoom that may be harvesting or selling it for who knows what purposes. I don't think the LP is going to do that to us. I don't mind the LP having my contact information out there publicly. I think that's, again, part of being a bottom-up party and being effectively representatives on this committee, that we're representing the members. And I think we should be accountable to members. I think that we, as a party, need to be able to show the public and show voters that, yes, you can trust us to, serve your interests if you elect us to government, because you can see in our own organization that we're already practicing the kind of accountability and transparency that we're saying that government should be doing. Practice what we preach.
Starchild, I'm going to interrupt in a moment that I think everything's been said now multiple times.
Okay, I hadn't said that, but I'm
well, in the past meeting you had. Maybe it was at the town hall. It might have been at the town hall.
I missed the town hall, so it wasn't
okay
there. But anyway, it's I think I said what we need to be said. I would just say if we don't pass this, I'm open. This is my effort to make it happen, because what we've been doing so far hasn't worked. So if you don't like this particular mechanism, then do something on your own. Come up with some other way to address it. I don't hear people arguing against transparency. So except perhaps on the narrow issue of people posting their individual emails and phone numbers. So if you don't want this, let's do something else. I don't want to roll around to the end of the term and see that nothing's moved forward on this.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak on this, or can we move to a vote? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, whenever you are ready. And I am turning off my video for one moment because I am going to be eating and I do not want to turn this into a platform committee mukbang.
Okay, Gary Alstead,
Abstain.
Mark Raymond,
I'll vote aye.
Ted Brown,
Nay.
Joe Barnhart,
No.
Matt Elko,
I think I'll vote aye.
Sean Dempsey,
Nay.
Ken Matz,
Nay.
Josh McHose,
Nay.
Tim McMaster,
Nay.
Omar Crow votes nay. Mike Seebeck,
Sorry, I was muted. No.
Starchild,
Aye.
Curry Taylor,
Abstain.
John Thompson,
Nay.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, I have 3 in favor, 9 opposed, 2 express abstentions.
Okay, that motion passes, but I will keep my word where I said I would do if this motion doesn't pass. So over the weekend, I will write the LNC again. And try to move this forward informally as best as I can. I also believe I can do a pinned post because our group is linked to on our page. So, you know, diligent's not even the right word, industrious members, if they click on the link to the group, if I can put a pinned post in there that links to the Elpedia page where people can find this information, that at least would be better than nothing. But I have been very diligent in keeping up the Elpedia page. And I would encourage everyone here to get an Elpedia account and add things to that page that you may think I have missed, including your own phone numbers and email addresses if you wish them to be on there and I haven't done so. We are moving on to the next item, which is a proposal from Joshua McCose, which is on 3.1 national defense. And his proposal is simply to delete the word sufficient from before the word military. So the sentence did read, we support the maintenance of a sufficient military to defend the United States against aggression. And if his proposal passes, it would read, we support the maintenance of a military to defend the United States against aggression. Mr. McCose, would you like to speak to your proposal?
Okay, so this is very easy for me to make the 2 extremes on one end. On one end, you've got the anarchists who can claim that no military is sufficient, or a, you know, or a militia, or whichever they like to they would like to. Sorry, I'm having lost train of thought. They'd like to, support. But on the other end, you've got fascists who would completely like to lock everything up to, expand the military state even more than what it currently is. So what is sufficient?
Thank you. I have Mr. Ricuro and then Mr. Seebeck.
I'm going to put my hand down, Madam Chair. I wanted to make a comment about the previous thing, but I'll just wait to the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Seebeck.
Yeah, I was gonna actually echo what Mr. McCo said. What defines sufficient? If you were even to walk into any military base or military unit, you would ask that question, you would get 40 different answers. Because one of the details of what a sufficient, finger quoted, military is depends upon what your unit is, what your mission is, and who's making the policy. I think taking it out here removes that debate and just leaves in the broader sense of, yes, we need having maintaining a military to defend against aggression. I think that fits just fine. So I'd be in favor of this.
Thank you, Mr. Seebeck. Mr. Thompson.
I'm also in favor of this. Anytime we can remove stray words from the platform to make the message less ambiguous is very important and should be pursued. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this?
Just on the matter of removing the word sufficient.
I'll put you next. I see Mr. Taylor raised, yeah, just on that matter, Star Child. So I
Okay.
have Mr. Taylor and then potentially Star Child.
I don't need to speak to that. I
Okay,
think
thank you.
it seems to have enough support. I just like to be recognized when something else is in order to
Okay, thank
make a general amendment.
I'm kind of on the fence on this right now. I can see both ways. Neither really tells me what's the objective size of the military, whether we have the word sufficient or not. I'd almost prefer like the word minimal military instead, so that we can actually imagine in our minds at least a little bit of the scope or the scale of the size that we're trying to reach here of the military. So I'm kind of still on the fence. I don't know if that jogs anybody's thoughts or not.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'd like to offer some historical information to the committee. This is one of the items that was recreated after what's colloquial known as the Portland Massacre. And the debates at the time, and for the reason for the word sufficient to be in there, kind of went around the same sort of point that Mr. Taylor just made. The concern was there are a lot of people in the party who are against the standing army and think that is against what the founders had said. And the word sufficient was put in there to try to thread the needle to get to the point that Mr. Taylor said. And perhaps I think if you were involved in those debates at that time, Mr. Taylor, you might have won with the word minimal, because I really think that's what they were trying to get at with the word sufficient. I think they meant just enough and no more is what they were trying to say there. So that's just some historical perspective on how this language came to be. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this? I'm going to speak in chat. Star Child, these extensive revisions need to be floated on the list first. That is such an extensive revision that it's not going to be in order at this meeting. If you want me to put it for the next meeting, I can do that. But this agenda was out a week ahead of time. We can't be hijacking. That's the wrong word because that implies some kind of intent. We can't take someone else's proposal. It's not the way we've been running these meetings and turn it into something that's this big change that nobody in the committee had time to think about. So please float that language on the list, and I'd be more than glad to put it on the agenda for next time. And of course, this I guess it hasn't been moved, but that's the way I would rule. And of course, the committee can do what the committee would like to do. Would anyone else like to speak to this amendment of the deletion of the word sufficient? Seeing none, is there any objection to this amendment of deleting the word sufficient?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You are objecting? Well, I've heard somebody else. So if there's no more debate, we are going to move to a vote on whether or not to delete the word sufficient. A yes vote would adopt this as a proposal. A no vote would leave the word sufficient in at this time. So if we're ready for a vote, when you are ready, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Madam Chair. Make sure I'm not on mute. Yes. Okay. Gary Alsett.
Aye.
Okay. Mark Raymond.
Abstain.
Ted Brown.
Abstain.
Joe Brunhart.
No.
Matt Choco.
Abstain.
Sean Dempsey.
Abstain because I don't like the entire amendment.
Ken Matz.
Aye.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Tim McMaster.
Nay.
Omar Crow's gonna pass. Mike Seebeck.
I'll vote aye.
Star Child.
I will also abstain for the same reason. I don't like the entire language of the military.
Corey Taylor.
Doesn't fix it.
Abstain.
John Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, I'm gonna put this on the screen because the only person that skipped was myself, I believe. And Omar Crow, I'm gonna vote aye. Anyone else get skipped or did I forget? 1024. Madam Chair, I have 6 in favor, 2 opposed, and 6 express abstentions.
Okay, thank you very much. That passes. And I see Star Child said he had put that extensive revision language on the list. I will add that to the next agenda. Okay, we have next, and we are with about 35 minutes left. Of course, anyone can move to extend time if they wish. When we get to that point, we have a proposal from Mike Seebeck. It concerns the same plank, but it's to add one sentence at the end that reads, "We support our veterans by calling for federal policy to not make more of them by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, invasion, or occupation, and to honor the government's contractual commitment to their complete lifetime mental and physical care both during and after their service." So that is the motion by Mr. Seebeck. Mr. Seebeck, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I do. The wording here is something that I've been working on for the past 4 years. I have had conversations with members of the armed services in all branches, some of whom I work directly with, some of whom I know casually. This is also something where I live, because I live in a county with 5 military bases covering 3 of the 6 branches of the military that, excuse me, is it 6? Yeah, well, 5 or 6 hours. But the point of it is that we have spent time working on this, and we have a lot of veterans in the LP, especially in this area. So part of the issue is this is a large contingency voting bloc that will not support the Democrats. They are not happy with the lip service that they've been getting from the Republicans. They agree with us on almost everything that we stand for. And they are just begging for a sign of support from us to come on in. The reality of it, now that's the wording itself, okay? Yes, we don't want to have more aggressive wars or undeclared wars. We've seen way too much of that, at least in my lifetime. And I'm sure everybody else has too. And we see what happens when that goes on. We drain blood and treasure from the country, and the country is not better off for it. And I work in defense, okay? As far as the contractual commitment to their mental and physical care, that's what happens when you enlist, when you sign up for the regular services. And I have seen these people, these members of the service, I've seen what they agreed to because they have copies of it. They kept the receipts. I've heard them complain about how their TRICARE expenses, which they shouldn't cost them anything according to their contracts with the military, have spiked every year, and the government is not honoring their service or what they've been doing. We have a homeless vet problem in this entire country that's happening because the government is not fulfilling their obligations to their veterans. We have a great opportunity here to fill a huge gap politically and socially here by supporting this group and by explicitly giving them a shout out to say, hey, we understand your plight and we want to get you the help and the respect that you deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Seebeck. I have Mr. Brown, Mr. Bremen, Mr. Cholko, and Mr. Hold on, Casciato.
Okay, everyone, I would move to divide the issue. At the point where it says invasion or occupation, we support our veterans by calling for federal policy to not make more of them by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, invasion, or occupation, period. Well, at least that'll be the first part considered, and then the second part would be the rest of it about the contractual commitment. I think that just about everybody would agree on the first part without question. The second part, I think, needs a little bit more debate and possible change. So that's why I would move to divide it.
Okay, I'm
Madam
just
Chair,
think-
I'm going to ask where.
Yeah, I'm hold on, I'm thinking a second here.
Yeah.
it's one sentence. It's not really divisible. I understand there's two concepts in here. What I would suggest, Mr. Brown.
Madam
eh,
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Seebeck.
I would disagree with that because of the nature of the semicolon there after occupation.
So
It was
okay.
it was a compound sentence by intention, and I believe it can be divided.
Okay, if you as the maker, because I'm still thinking about it. So the problem is, I understand, but Mr.
Well,
Seebeck,
it would seem easy just to do the first part, and then if that passes, then we just add the
Yeah.
second part on as the next part.
I got you. Yeah, I agree, Mr. Brown. I just had to think about it a second. This was a little bit of a different situation than I've come into. So, but this, because and you want to know what? I do think this is the two concepts are not necessarily so. I do think there are two different concepts there. So I do think it's divisible upon the demand of one member. I don't think we need to vote on division. I do think you have the right to demand division, Mr. Brown. So this question is now divided. We will debate the first part first, which is we support our veterans by calling for federal policy to make more of them by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, evasion, or occupation. Now, everyone who had your hand up, if you don't wish to speak to that part, please lower your hand.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Secretary.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut the line. But I want to, again, this is like a parliamentary inquiry, I guess. And because at the last meeting where we did this, I was confused and I had to go back and literally read through that section of Roberts, 27, I think it is, 27, I think it is.
Mhm.
Can you please explain to the committee what this means? Because I understand, I agree that upon one person calling for division, it can be divided.
Yes.
So explain that, because what we did was we had passed the first part and then that became our proposal. And I was totally confused about that. I didn't realize passing that first part meant we passed the whole thing. So could you please explain that better to the committee, what we would be doing and what a yes vote and a no vote means on each particular part?
Okay, we're not at the point of a yes or no vote, but I have a question. Are you confused on what we're doing? Are you asking for further explanation? Because I'm not sure the entire committee is. Let me just do it before we get. Basically, and what the maker of the motion has agreed to is that it was two independent thoughts that he just stylistically chose to join by a colon that could have just as easily have been two separate sentences.
Yes.
So he has, Mr. Brown moved to basically divide the two sentences that were attached by a colon. So we are right now only talking about and debating the first sentence. We will vote on the first sentence. If it passes, it will, only that first sentence will be adopted, and then we will consider the second sentence, but joining it rather than the traditional way with a first letter cap and some introductory phrase like we further support, but instead joining it by a colon. If we do not pass this first sentence, we still are going to consider the second sentence, but we'll have to add some introductory words to it to make it a coherent sentence, since it was originally spliced to the first one by a colon, which was a stylistic choice. So all we are debating on and we will be voting on it first is whether or not to adopt the sentence, "We support our veterans by calling for federal policy to not make more of them by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, invasion, or occupation." That is all we are on right now. Is that clearer, Mr. Secretary?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Just so everyone understands that we would be passing the thing if you voted for one thing.
no, we'd only be passing the first sentence if you vote for it. It's divided into
Right,
two
right.
separate questions. Okay, Mr. Choco and then Mr. Alstad.
Okay, first, thank you. That explanation helped me a lot as well to make sure I understood what's going on there. So thank you for that. Second, so I think that the first part here that we're discussing is like a no-brainer that, you know, damn near all libertarians agree with. So I think we should pass it, and I expect it would likely pass at convention if it gets in front of the delegates. Thank you.
Mr. Alstad.
Yeah, my only comment, I mean, I like the intent here, but a veteran is someone who's served in the military. So we're calling for a reduction in the size of the number of troops in the military. I'm not, if we are, then we should say it. And if we aren't, I don't see how we're reducing the number of veterans. Thanks.
Is that a point of information to Mr. Seeback at all, or just a debate point?
Just a debate point.
Okay, thank you, sir. Star Child.
Again, if it's in order, I would like to suggest replacing the word "our" with U.S. government military. This is an example of what I call the nationalist we. I don't think it's my government. I like to say the U.S. government and I have a non-consensual relationship. I think, words like "our," "us," and "we," especially in the context of the platform, should refer to the Libertarian Party or the freedom movement more generally, not to the United States or the U.S. government.
Okay, thank you. That amendment would be in order. So you are moving to strike the word "are" before veterans and replacing it with, I wasn't clear.
U.S. government military.
U.S. government military veterans. The word "veterans" is already there. I just wanted to read it as it would be as a phrase.
Correct.
Is that correct on screen?
Yes, and I do support the dividing of the question if that hasn't already been automatically done.
Yeah, it's been automatically done.
Okay.
Okay, and would you like to speak further to your amendment?
No, I think I pretty much covered it. If people have questions or don't understand, I'd be happy to elaborate further, but I think probably the committee members understand what I'm saying with that, why we wouldn't want to use the personal pronoun.
Okay, so now we are just on the Star Child amendment. And I see Mr. Ricuro, Mr. Seebeck, and Mr. Thompson. Mr. Ricuro.
I wanted to talk about the main motion, but I'll talk about this as well. I'll just get back in line for the main motion. I was actually thinking about something similar to what Star Child mentioned. I'm just struggling with so much of this language. Oh, no, it's not the change I wanted to make. Sorry. I was going to say we support. I'd rather just say we support military veterans. Would it be in order to secondary motion or no?
Yes. If it deals strictly with the Star Child amendment, you could strike U.S. government if that's what you were suggesting.
Yeah, I'd like to strike U.S. government and just put we support military veterans. Yeah, just military, and then the rest of the sentence I think would flow better.
Okay, so that is now the secondary amendment. Mr. C, would you like to speak to that further, Mr. Secretary?
No, no. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Seeback, you
Yeah, I
were
was going to speak against the Star Child Amendment, but I'm also going to speak against this amendment too.
okay, go
And
right
the
ahead.
and eventually the main one too, or about the main one. If we amend this to say we support veterans, who's veterans? Our platform is about policy for this country. That is why the word "our" was in there in the first place. Not Canadian, not Greek, not Russian, not Ukrainian, not Chinese, not Korean, not Japanese, insert nation here. It's about our veterans. Okay. And that was why it was written that way in the first place. And trying to amend this too deep for these different wording takes away from what the actual purpose was.
Thank you, Mr. Seeback. Mr. Thompson.
Yes, I was with the amendment. I was similarly thinking we could just remove the words and just say we support veterans. I understand Mr. Seeback's concerns and saying that it's ours and that our party is only dealing with our country. However, I think that's kind of one of those implied understandings, and that we're operating in a field where we are only dealing with our particular country. But in general, we do support veterans, and we support limiting the number of military veterans who have been harmed by conflict. And to the second part and how this will affect the eventual second part, we support the government standing by its contracts, whether it's our government or China's government or Russia's government or Canada's government. It doesn't matter. We support that if there is a government must abide by the contracts it makes with its people. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Let's see. Yeah, I think I would go for the military, just military veterans versus the U.S. government veterans. I think that's a good change. I'm not sure there are any other kind that we'd be talking about here. And I also think we don't really need our when we mentioned the United States twice in the previous couple of sentences there. So military is a good compromise on that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brayman.
Yes, I want to second what Mr. Seeback has been saying about the necessity to leave in the phrase "our veterans." That has a very specific emotional effect on people, and I think that the particular people it would have an effect on our veterans, and that's the point that Mr. Seeback has been trying to make. That we're trying to use our platform to attract people to our party, and I think it's important to not to be unattuned to these kinds of emotional things, even if they don't affect the denotation of the phrase, of the wording. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to Mr. Ricuro's amendment of the Star Child Amendment, which was to strike U.S. government so that it would just read military veterans? That would become then the primary amendment. All right, and I could tell there is objection. So let me explain what we will be voting on. A yes vote would strike from the Star Child Amendment the phrase U.S. government and just leave in the word military. A no vote would put us back to the Star Child Amendment, which was striking the word "our" and putting in the entire phrase U.S. government military. Are we clear on what we are voting on?
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, what we are voting on is Mr. Ricure. We had the original proposal, which was we support our veterans. Then Star Child amended by striking the word "our" and inserting the phrase U.S. government military. Mr. Ricuro moved to amend Star Child's amendment by striking the words U.S. government. A yes vote would then make the primary amendment to just be striking the word "are" and instead inserting military. It doesn't adopt that language. It just makes it the amendment we will next be voting on. A no vote would make the amendment we'd next be voting on or further amending would be striking "are" and making in the phrase being U.S. government military. None of this is adopting anything yet. Did that explain, Mr. Bremen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Madam Chair.
What-
Okay, Gary Alsett.
Aye.
Okay, Mark Raymond,
Aye.
Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunhart,
Abstain.
Matt Choco,
Abstain.
John Dempsey,
Abstain.
Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Tim McMaster,
Aye.
Omar Crow votes aye. Mike Seebeck,
Reluctantly, aye.
Starchild,
Nay.
Curry Taylor,
Aye.
John Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, let's get the screen switched here. Did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, I show 10 in favor, 1 opposed, and 3 express abstentions.
Okay, so the Ruggiero amendment to the Star Child amendment passes. So now what we are on for debate, discussion, or further amendment is striking the word "are" and replacing it with the word "military." Would anyone else like to debate or further amend? And the amendment and debate is really limited to the, right now, the narrow topic of striking the word "are" and adding the word "military." I know there's objection, so Mr. Secretary, if you would prepare, what we are doing now is where we will actually be getting to where I think concerns would be. A yes vote would strike the word "are" from our proposal, which hasn't yet passed committee, and replace it with the word "military." And that's then would be the main amendment that we would be considering whether or not to adopt as a proposal of this committee. A no vote would leave the word "are" intact and the word "military" go bye-bye. So is that clear? Okay, Mr. Secretary, whenever you're ready.
Okay, Gary Alsted.
Aye.
Where's my, here we go. Mark Raymond,
No.
Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunhart.
Abstain.
Okay, Matt Choco,
Aye.
John Dempsey,
Abstain.
Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Tim McMaster,
Aye.
Omar Crow will vote aye. Mike Seebeck,
Sorry, no.
Starchild,
Aye.
Curry Taylor,
Aye.
John Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, don't think I missed anyone. Let me come back over here about number 8. Did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, I show 10 in favor, 2 opposed, and 2 expressed abstentions.
Okay, so that amendment passes. So we're now back to the top level, the main amendment. I'll just give you a moment to catch up, Mr. Secretary.
So it would be strike our, okay, I got it.
So the sentence we are now considering is we support military veterans by calling for federal policy to not make more of them by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, invasion, or occupation. Is there any further debate or amendment on that proposal?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Secretary.
I'll speak. I was trying to get my hand up, but even though I'm glad that we passed this amendment, I hear what Mr. Seebeck was saying about making this something that's personal, or maybe Mr. Raymond had said that. I think, and this might be a little unpopular, and I don't wish to offend anybody. I think that our platform as a whole speaks to people, and I don't think it should get more personal when it comes to specific issues. But that's why the platform is broad and it covers broad topics. We've talked about solutions in the platform before, like in the healthcare plank, saying that if we did something, it would equal something. We don't know that. So I don't want to let perfection be the enemy of good here. I think I'm going to support this, but there's things about it that I'm not in love with. But at least that part right there, that the part about we support military veterans, I feel like that's broad enough, and it gets the point home. I'm trying to help. At least I think I'm trying to help this pass for the maker, but I understand why. I can understand and appreciate the passion of where the mover is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Seebeck.
Yeah, the reason it's worded this way is very simple. The only legitimate form of warfare by this government of ours is through a declaration of war. We haven't had one of those since December 8th, 1941. We've had how many wars and occupations and invasions since then? How many people have we had to bring home in coffins because of that, because of those misadventures? The idea of not making more of our veterans has to do with not having more war. It has to do with not sending them to places where they shouldn't, where they're not really needed to be defending our country, because they're not in our country. And the reality of it is that, yeah, the original veteran term, not the way it's used today, and maybe this is my own extra mentality coming in, is that a veteran was one who went overseas or fought, or actually fought for our country, not just someone who put on the uniform. That's changed nowadays, especially post-Vietnam, where it's now a veteran is someone who's worn the uniform. And that's fine, that's the reality of it. But if you send them over to fight and die, the military will need to replenish the people. And to do that, they got to go recruit or draft. And that is how they make more veterans through undeclared wars of foreign aggression, invasion, or occupation. This statement says we support the veterans, but it also is saying we got to let's knock off all these undeclared wars and get back to what we also have in the platform somewhere else, which is peace.
Thank you, Mr. Seebeck. Would anyone else like to speak to this or amend further? Okay, Mr. McCose.
I don't know how I go about this. I was gonna say, could we possibly add in deployment or right after invasion? Because we have the people who are on defensive deployments right now. My cousin is in Poland, and how do we include him? Because that's not included. It's with what's going on in Russia right now. I'm just asking, is that included with this? That's about it.
Is that a point of information to Mr.
The
Seebeck?
point of, yes, it's a point of information. And if he would also like to think that an amendment to include that is in order as well, I'm just asking him for that as well. Yes, a point of information.
Okay, Mr. Seebeck, please feel free to answer.
I'm not quite sure I understood what Mr. McCose is asking for an amendment there, but to address the deployment issue, we deploy Marines to guard our embassies around the globe. That's not in a combat situation. That's an administrative position. So I guess I got to ask, and what exactly we're going with that. I'm not opposed to the idea. I don't understand exactly how to put that in there in a way that would be understandable. Does that make any sense?
How do we be inclusive of those military veterans who are now defending places like Poland again? We have current tensions with Russia. They're a neighbor to Russia. I'm just saying, I know that we have military deployments right along the border of Russia with what's going on. How do we include them even though they're, not, these are, offensive measures? If we added the word deployment, would that be inclusive of them as well?
I think aggression qualifies under offensive. But are they considered an occupying force? Are they there as guests, or are they there under NATO auspices? I understand what you're saying, and I'm not against the idea.
They should be
How do we get there?
Point of order. Okay, we stop. We are getting into crosstalk here. Mr. McCose, you had a further clarification question?
I was just saying they need to be included in this. That's all I'm saying. It's not, I don't feel that they're included when, is it inclusive?
Are you proposing an amendment?
Sure, I could, just like I said, the word deployment after invasion.
Okay, so Mr. McCose proposes to add the word. So we have by undeclared wars or foreign aggression, invasion, deployment, or occupation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. McCose. So now we are strictly on the McCose amendment. Mr. Seebeck.
Oh, sorry, didn't have my hand in.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was gonna ask before we did this if I could have a point of personal privilege and just well, I'll just make it anyways. 3.3, I was gonna put it on the screen, but I didn't want to do that. 3.3 says we would end the current U.S. government's policy of foreign intervention, including military and economic aid. We recognize the right of all people to resist tyranny and defend themselves. I feel like it's kind of mentioned there and other places. All the planks in 3.0 and 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 kind of cover these things. That's why I'm struggling with this entire text because it's there in pieces. Everything that we're saying. Yeah, so I'll yield at that.
Okay, Mr. Brungart, if we could keep it to the amendment, we will have opportunity to talk further about the entire sentence once we dispose of the amendment. Mr. Brungart.
Motion to extend by 20 minutes to 11:20.
You were paying attention to the time where I wasn't, because we are coming up. Thank you so much, sir. So we have a motion to extend the meeting adjournment time for 20 minutes. Is there objection to this motion to extend?
Objection.
Objection.
Okay, it is debatable, but I would suggest we could spend 20 minutes debating it. And I think I would highly suggest we just go to a vote. But if anyone would like to debate or speak to it, Mr. Brungart?
No.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to the motion to extend?
Has
Hearing
the
none.
maker spoken to the motion?
He did not wish to.
Okay.
I think it's pretty obvious he would like to get through this. That's the purpose. Okay, Mr. Secretary.
Yes. Okay. Gary Alsett.
Nay.
Mark Raymond.
Nay.
Ted Brown.
Nay.
Joe Brungart.
Yes.
Matt Choco.
Abstain.
Sean Dempsey.
Abstain.
Ken Matz.
Aye.
Josh McHose.
Nay.
Tim McMaster,
Aye.
Omar Crowe votes nay. Mike Seebeck,
Aye.
Starchild,
I abstain.
Curry Taylor,
Nay.
John Thompson.
Abs-
Okay, let me get this on the screen for you guys. Madam Chair, did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, we have 4 in favor, 6 opposed, 4 express abstentions.
Okay, that fails. So orders of the day are that we are adjourning our next meeting. So we are adjourning at 11 p.m. Eastern. Our next meeting is March 31st. I am going to end just with a conclusory note that I had asked the committee, but of course I can't order this because the committee has every right to propose proposals up to the before we hit the convention floor. But I really, if we want the input of the members, would like to be done with our proposals by the first week of April, by the end of the first week of April, which is coming up rapidly. I would highly suggest that people start putting things up for email ballot. I'm going to look at some of these that are coming up and make a judgment call and confer with the maker if they would object to me unilaterally sponsoring, as is the prerogative of the chair, certain email ballots to move things along, as that is my responsibility as chair. But I would prefer not to exercise that prerogative. I've been very, very light touch in the way I chair, which is how I prefer. So we are now adjourned, and I do thank you all so much for your hard work. And I will get the agenda out for next week as soon as possible, but we will be taking up immediately where we left off here with debate of the McHose amendment to add the word deployment. So I hope you have an awesome evening. If there are any guests here that wish to talk with platform committee members, I always hang out for a few minutes. I encourage any other committee members, if you want to talk informally or talk with members, to hang out. But I usually keep the room open for about another 15 minutes for just chit chat if we would like to do that. So I'll stick around, but everyone else is free to leave.
And if you log off, does that automatically close the room?
It does, unless I add another host, but I am ending the recording at this time because the official meeting is